In this video, I'm looking at the game between Andrey Esipenko and Wei Yi. Before we dive into the analysis, let's have a look at the standings. Here are the positions in the tournament after 6 rounds. So out in front, Javier Sindarov, the 20-year-old from Uzbekistan who's setting the tournament alight. He's a point and a half clear of Fabiano Caruana, who's also having a very good tournament, actually. But let's look at the bottom of the tournament table. Well, it's tough down there. We've got Hikaru Nakamura, Wei Yi, Andrey Esipenko, all on 2 points. It's not easy for them at all. So Esipenko and Wei Yi probably thought, well, this is their chance to get back into the tournaments when they were playing each other in this game. Esipenko, 24 years old from Russia. Wei Yi, 26 years old from China. They had an epic battle in the World Cup, you might recall. It was very, very tight games. And in one of the tie-break games, Esipenko had played really, really well, outplaying him very classically, very technically. He's a very good technical player. But then he blundered a rook and Wei Yi won the match. So let's have a look at this game. Esipenko playing white against Wei Yi. Esipenko has white. e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. It's a Petrov, which is the Chinese speciality. So many of their top players play it. So d4, not an easy opening to kind of find something new and different. So d4, okay, knight takes e4, completely normal. And now you can take on e5 with a pawn, you can play bishop d3, but Esipenko plays queen e2. Now that really is unusual. The knight is attacked, so defended by d5, and knight takes e5. So it looks like a French exchange variation. The structure is the same, but with these knights and the queen in a slightly odd position. Of course, the threat is to play f3, boot the knight out of the way, and then give a nasty discovered check somewhere. But bishop e7 just blocks the e-file. I have to say, this looks a very odd position for white with this queen on e2. f3 pushes the knight, and knight c3 attacks the pawn on d5, and knight f5 moves out of the way, defends this one and attacks that one. Queen f2, and Wei castles, and bishop f4, and in turn the knight on e5 is driven back, and it goes back to d3. And then knight c6. So that's a good move. This pawn in the middle is attacked, and already, to my eyes, black looks absolutely fine because black has already castled. It's just a question of time. Black has already castled, and white is, still sort of floundering around with pieces, but the king is still in the middle. That's the point. And white has to take a timeout with knight e2 to defend the d-pawn, and that just blocks in the bishop. So, black's pieces just look better than white's. Yes, the queen has maneuvered over to f2. Could that be significant? Well, if white gets in g4, the queen might be on the right side of the board to support a kingside pawn storm, maybe. But apart from that, white's position, to my eyes, doesn't look very inspiring at all. And this is a very clever idea from Wei. He now played knight b4. Now that has to be exchanged off, as c2 is hanging. So knight takes, bishop takes. It's an annoying check to deal with. c3 pushes the bishop back, but if white wants to castle queenside with the pawn on c3, there are simply more weaknesses in the position. And black's pieces are really harmonious here. And yeah, white is struggling because that knight is on e2, blocking the bishop on f1. So what does white do about this? Well, it is possible to castle queenside. There aren't so many weaknesses on the queen side. It's not that bad. But after, let's say, rook e8, threatening to take on e2 and then take on f4, then actually, black has a little bit of initiative. But okay, I think if white plays accurately, then it should be roughly level. But certainly, nothing special for white in this position. But that seems reasonable. But instead, Esipenko quite quickly actually played the bishop back to d2. Well, in an ideal world, you might be able to push that knight from f5. If it's, you give white another move, you push the knight on f5 with g4. And yeah, you might be able to get some initiative on the king side, but it's going to take some time to organize that. And you still have to think about your king. Is it safe on the queen side? But anyway, that's Esipenko's idea. But it's very slow. It's really slow. And Wei found a very clever move in this position. So time for you to have a think. Time for me to have a drink. So what would you play with black in this position? Black to play.
Do you want to improve your chess? Get access to live masterclasses with yours truly? Then subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess, and for just $25 a month, you get a newsletter with a test game, calculation puzzles, a monthly opening survey, access to an archive with over 100 opening surveys. And you can join in live masterclasses exclusive to patrons where you can ask me questions directly over Zoom. All for only $25 per month. Do subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess and join the club.
What did you come up with? Did you find this move? Queen e8. This is really subtle. A creeping move. I do like this. Very clever. So first of all, okay, the obvious one. That knight is pinned on the e-file. So it's not easy for white to kind of unwind and develop. That's one thing. The next thing is the queen looks in two directions. Over here and over here. And that's really useful. So for example, if white were to castle queenside, queen a4 is really nasty. Very difficult to deal with. You need to protect the a-pawn. If you play king b1, the rook is hanging. If you play a3, you can just take, and that's a deadly attack. See, white's queen is just too far away. So queen e8 prevents castles queenside. And in some positions, the queen can even come out to the king side. And if g4, okay, that was I suppose the big idea, to push the knight back. Then watch what happens. Actually, it's very difficult. For example, well, one could castle queenside here, or bishop g2, let's say, but then f5. And if g5, then f4. And that f-pawn basically controls all three minor pieces. Makes it very difficult for white to play any useful move. And then, well, this queen could sort of pop out to g6. That knight on a good day might find itself on f5 and e3. Shooting my arrows not very accurately today, but anyway, you get the idea. That pawn on f4 does a brilliant job. So queen e8, what a beautiful idea. So how did how did Esipenko respond? After 36 minutes, I mean, he was obviously thrown by that one. I mean, his position's already quite bad, but he came up with King D1. Well, that's how desperate he was. No, I mean, it's such an ugly move. If he has time to play G4 and sort his pieces out, maybe play G4 and then knight G3 and bishop D3 and put the king here. I mean, maybe it's okay for white. But with the king stuck in the middle, oof. But this move is just very uncomfortable. Check. King C1, and Wei went on to the attack with B5. So he might be wanting to play B4 to break open some files, and then we've got the rook joining in the attack. That's one idea. Knight F4 played. I mean, he could just go for it with B4. Instead, he played C5. Also very good. He's just trying to open lines against the king. Of course, that can't be taken because of bishop takes knight. You can see the queen reaches across. Bishop D3. An exchange in the middle. Well, bishop C2, you have to drive the queen away and then you can recapture. Bishop D7. So, I mean, you can see that black's pieces are really well coordinated. The rooks are connected, for example. But just you compare that with white's position. Yeah. I'm going to say it. Those rooks are split. That's the problem with leaving your king in the center. They can't coordinate. So it means that when black's rook comes to the open file, well, they can't really be challenged very well, the rooks. And now great move from Wei. Rook C4. In recent years, Wei has played quite dry chess, actually. In his youth, he was, known for his daring attacks, but he seems to be reliving those glory days now in this game. So what happens if this is taken? I mean, black can recapture with either pawn. I suppose the obvious one is to recapture with the b pawn and then shift the rook over and attack that b file. But it's possible to take the other way. Basically, with white's rooks being split, it's very hard to actually defend this position. So Esipenko decided not to take that rook. So let's put the position back. So rook came to c4 and that pawn is attacked. So knight e2 from Esipenko defending. And knight e7. That's an interesting move. So Wei is looking to play bishop f5 to exchange off that bishop, and then it'll be easier to invade on c2. So therefore g4 covering the f5 square, and just rook fc8. So doubling on the c file. It's not quite clear how black is going to break through, but one feels that something is going to happen here. h4. Well, I mean, that's a pretty slow attack. But it's very, very hard to suggest any alternatives for white here. I mean, with the king here, white looks bossed. It's funny, it looks like one of those Fischer random positions where, white could castle just by flipping this rook over, but no. This is not Fischer random. b4. Okay, so that allows the bishop to enter the game here, and that's what happened even after b3. So b3 played and bishop b5. What a great response. So now there is going to be a threat to move this rook away and exchange, and then black will be able to enter on those weakened squares on d3 and c2. So Esipenko just took that rook. Bishop takes. So now Wei is a whole rook down, but trying to defend this position is impossible. So if, for example, bishop takes bishop, this didn't happen, then you can see, checkmate threatened here. And if rook c1, check, you take this, and well, it's game over. It's interesting to see when the queen is basically offside, then black's queen just takes over. Let's go back to this position. Bishop c2 played. Bishop d3, same story. Wei invading on the d3 square. And if rook c1, then that can just be taken and queen here. So in the game, bishop c3 played. Pawn takes. And the final move of the game, rook b8 check. Here, Esipenko resigned. Well, if knight b3, let's just continue it. Queen a3, threatening mate on b2. And after that, takes. Here, bishop f4 check and mate next move. Always nice to end with, a mating attack. Really nice. So, well, great game by Wei Yi, but really an absolute shocker from Esipenko. I mean, his opening preparation was very odd. I mean, he's obviously trying to go for some very slight advantage in playing like this, but it's just not good enough. Black's moves looked fairly easy. I mean, it's pretty straightforward development, and by this stage, it's already, well, I mean, white can equalize, but you have to be very careful. And bishop d2 was just really ill-judged. And I come back to this move, queen e8. It's a brilliant move. Multi-purpose move. And already Esipenko was in a really poor situation. So let's take a look at the standings after round 7. So we're now at the halfway stage of the tournament. So out in the lead still, Javier Sindarov with 6 points. He drew against Giri in his round 7 game and was pressing all the way. I mean, Giri had a really tough defense, but managed to hold out. So that game was a draw. Caruana did his best to press against Pragyanananda, but that game was a draw. So Caruana still in second position on 4.5. And then we have Prag and Giri on 50% on 3.5. So that you can see that the tournament table is being stretched. We have Esipenko right at the bottom there with 2. And Sindarov 4 points ahead on 6 points. So it's looking very, very promising for Javier Sindarov. However, we're only at the halfway stage and everything is still possible. Caruana, I mean, apart from his loss against Sindarov, he's actually having an excellent tournament. So, he's he's pretty consistent. There is still a chance for him to fight back. What will happen? It's going to be absolutely fascinating. So Monday is a rest day in the candidates, but they will resume battle on Tuesday, and I look forward to covering round 8. See you soon.